misconceptions all over this. This is what our listeners say. Recorded in Hong Kong and presented by Regina Larko, yeah, that's me. The Hashtag Impact Podcast interviews people making a social impact with their work. Our show wants to raise awareness for our guests' work with impact by giving them a platform to share their inspiring stories. From rooftops to cafes, from co-working spaces to a former army base. The places where we record represent the noise and contrasts of busy and buzzing Hong Kong. A place most of Hashtag Impact Podcast guests call home. Real, honest, and fun. Our conversations with these brilliant changemakers will show you how you can make your own impact. Find us on iTunes, Spotify, Android, and pretty much all podcast apps that are out there. And head over to iTunes to subscribe to #impact.com. Hi everyone, it's so great to be here. Oh my goodness! I tried to have like a really professional introduction, but that's just not me. I always like surprises, and I just want to take a moment to say it's such an honor to be doing a live podcast in the Fringe Club in the heart of Hong Kong. Up on the roof at the Fringe Club, I recorded episode 2 of Hashtag Impact Podcast. But before that, I had a very special guest on the show that was recorded in autumn of 2016 when the website of Hashtag Impact wasn't even up yet. I think I didn't even have a logo yet, but I was brave enough to send out an email to a woman, and that woman is sitting right next to me today. Sue Toomey is the executive director of HandsOn Hong Kong, and she was the very first guest of Hashtag Impact Podcast. And I just threw her into the cold water, like myself. I think we kind of fell into it together because I didn't know what I was in for, and neither did Sue. It's such an honor that I get to revisit you today because season 4 of Hashtag Impact Podcast that is airing right now is revisiting incredible changemakers.
By the way, I'm not crying. This is AC is blowing on my eye.
Sorry. I was wondering because I keep making people cry on my show.
And it was AC.
No, it was just AC. But Sue, it's been wonderful that you were on this journey with me from day 1, and that we get to do this together again after more than 2.5 years ago when we sat down for the very first recording, the very first podcast for the both of us.
Yeah, it's my honor to be back with you again, Regina.
And during. Should we change seats? Should we try?
No, it's okay.
Coming.
I'll try. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we recorded last time, you had just started at HandsOn Hong Kong, and before that, you had a very successful career in the corporate space. So I just wanted to, I wanted to check in with you how that transition was for you. Were there any? And I just assumed that there were a lot of surprises and maybe a few misconceptions as well that you had when you started coming from the corporate sector going into the nonprofit.
There were definitely some misconceptions and some surprises and delightful moments along the way. So just briefly, HandsOn Hong Kong, we're a local charity, and our mission is to empower everyone in Hong Kong to volunteer. So when I went from a career, a whole lifetime really of being in the corporate world to coming into the nonprofit space, I think what really touched me every day was to see how many people were willing to give their time to, whether it was volunteering to a service activity or even to help our organization. We have people who come and fix our IT, people who come and build frames for us to be able to run a service program. Just giving their time. And that was actually a really touching surprise for me. Some of the other maybe not so surprising misconceptions is that when you're running any kind of organization, whether it's a for-profit business or a nonprofit charity, the same principles apply for success. And, I thought going to the nonprofit world, I would have to, I was a little bit blind going in thinking I'm going to have to do things totally differently. I'm going to have to throw out what I know. And what was actually, I think hopefully good to see was that years of experience in running different types of organizations, planning, having a good strategic approach to things, hiring the right people, inspiring them, getting people aligned. One business might be a little bit more mission driven, and another one might be more profit driven. But in the end, the right ingredients, pulling them together and moving everyone in the same direction still applies no matter what. So that was that. Probably the other misconception I had was how much of a gap there can be in other ways between the corporate world and the nonprofit world, and really how limited the resources are in the nonprofit space and many of the organizations that we work with. And we ourselves are a small NGO. So, we'll sometimes get a call from a company, a well-meaning, good-intentioned company, who will say, we've got 250 water bottles. Would you like them? And we might say, well, I don't know what we're going to do with them. But we certainly know somebody who might. We work with an organization who helps homeless people, or we might work with an under-resourced school. So great, could you deliver them? And they say, oh, no. Could you really have them picked up? We start to think, okay, so, it's, I don't think you realize how, some of these nonprofits are run by one or two people. Them going to pick up those water bottles is time away from serving the community. So I think what we're trying to do at HandsOn is continually educate some of our great intentioned corporate partners on just what it takes to actually make a meaningful change and meaningful support to a nonprofit.
And I would encourage everyone to go back to episode 1 and find out more about your work as well, even though we both said we listened to the episode now again, and it's a bit, I still send people back to that episode, even though there were a lot of things I maybe I wouldn't have said anymore, like now after running this show for a while. But it was so wonderful when I remember doing the research the very first time before we met, and I had heard about HandsOn before, but going into it and really seeing what you're doing. And you mentioned it's a small NGO. Back then it was 8 employees. Is that still correct?
We're 11 now.
11 now, growing, yes. But still, there are, how many NGOs are you working with right now that you're supporting?
We have grown quite a bit. I think we were 60 back then, and we now support 102 nonprofits, mostly small scale, under-resourced, who need not just volunteer management and recruitment, but they also need support with program development, with different types of training, with helping to direct corporate funds and match corporate partnerships. So we work with more than 100. Some of them are very regular on our calendar that is entirely free and open to the public. Some of them are sort of on an as-needed basis. So we'll do a review or sort of a needs assessment with each of our NGO partners to see what is it you need, so that when we're out talking to volunteers, talking to corporates, talking to schools, we can find out what it is that they have the manpower to help do, and we can match it up with a need from one of our partners.
And the exciting thing that that I heard them at the very first volunteer day celebration, where you kind of announced it like in between the lines. I wasn't really sure like what is happening there, but then a few months later, has anyone heard here of Servathon? And if you haven't, I see, have some people been involved? Yes. Amazing. This is something that is just blowing my mind, because knowing that you were 11 people working, that you pull this off, this 1 week community service extravaganza of 2,000 people involved in just 1 week, volunteering for. That's the numbers from last year. I guess there are even more now. 18,000 beneficiaries in just a week. It's just blowing my mind. But so what worked? I guess that worked. But what didn't?
Right. It's always interesting to hear what didn't work, right? Nobody wants to hear how great something went. And actually, the first serve-a-thon, I think the intention was there for it to be great. We were making it up a little bit as we went along. Our intention was to make sure that Hong Kong had a moment in time where everyone came together and was united in the name of service. There was, in fact, at the time when we were launching it, there was quite a bit of political contention in the city, and we thought service is something that everyone can wrap their head around, and it doesn't matter what your political, religious views are, just serving the community is a unifier. So we probably ran before we walked a little bit with our first serve-a-thon. We knew we wanted to have this. It's a concept that other major markets also have, where a moment in time where everyone comes together for a day, a weekend, a week to serve. So we were a little overambitious in year one, and we fell over our feet a few times because we were really trying to just rush this to get it in the spring. And because the fall is such a busy time for schools, for companies, for individuals, and we thought it'd be really great to have this moment in the spring. It's also a little bit of a fundraiser for HandsOn. It's an awareness raiser and it's a fundraiser. And we said, we're not the kind of charity, at least the nature of what we do. We weren't really about a charity ball, and raffles and things like that. We said, our mission is getting people to serve. We can do that, which is mission driven, and also try to raise some funds at the same time. We'd also done a little bit of research with Nielsen, our pro bono partner, and we surveyed more than 1,000 people in Hong Kong. They did, and we asked, what is your intention to volunteer? Are you interested in volunteering? And 3/4 said, absolutely, I intend to volunteer in the next year. Follow-up question, how many of you actually have in the past year? And it was less than 1/3. And so then we delved a little deeper. What are the things that hold you back? No surprise, in Hong Kong, time is the number one enemy of people being able to do really lots of things they'd like to do. But the other was not understanding where to get started and what kind of impact they might have. You might see something as being a much bigger issue than you can really put the time into solving. And so that's another impetus and a catalyst for Serve-a-thon, was you said, people have the intention, we need to help them just put that into some action. And for them to see it doesn't take all your time. Just put one step forward, and once you volunteer once, the opportunity to do so again is so much greater because you realize it's not so difficult. It doesn't take that much time. And I actually can feel that difference in a very short time.
And there's this word I stumbled upon recently, and we both got so excited about it when I mentioned it to you. It's the phrase of emotional return on investment. And I just love this so much because you also shared with me in the very first episode we recorded that you've seen this firsthand as well, and I think everyone who tried volunteering has probably experienced it themselves as well, is how much it impacts the beneficiaries, yes, but how much it impacts you as a volunteer. And I think that's why it's so important what you're doing at HandsOn, because you want to empower everyone and more groups. And we can get into, maybe we still have some time to get into that, how you also evolved, I think, as an organization to get more families involved, help families with kids to come out in the weekend and volunteer, or youth come and volunteer, because it has, there's statistics and data on that it does almost more to you as a volunteer. So, is it selfish? Should we be more selfish and start volunteering? What do you think?
Absolutely, of course. But I will say that we kind of joke that the dirty little secret about volunteering is that it's so good for you, the individual. And there's a study that showed that when people give their time to help others, the brain actually releases the chemical dopamine, and that's the happiness effect. So who doesn't want to have that? But there is data to back this up. We did another study with Nielsen this past year, and there's quite a bit of quite a number of people in Hong Kong who state that they often do feel lonely. They feel that they have anxiety and stress, and volunteering is one of those ways more than 80% of the people said if they are someone who volunteers, they feel that it does help them to feel more connected to society. Bringing it back to youth and families, some studies that have been done in the U.S. have shown that young people who volunteer before the age of 14 are 50% less likely to get involved in drugs and alcohol or to abuse drugs and alcohol. So, my son's 15. I'm really trying to get it in there. But
how is he excited? Like how hard is it to sell at home?
Well, I think volunteering can take lots of different shapes. When your mother says, "Come chop vegetables with me, boy," he's not that excited about it. But when through school or different activities, they can go and play soccer with young kids or help refugees with homework or do something a little bit different, then I think it actually touches them a little bit more. And so at HandsOn, we spent the last year and a half really trying to expand who we can bring into the fold of volunteering. And it was a little bit trickier than we actually expected because a lot of our NGO partners really wanted ages 18 and above. Insurance reasons, just, they didn't really want to have to, they want the volunteers to be fully able to just dive in. But we're seeing that younger volunteers actually have a lot to offer, and getting them involved, even just from an educational standpoint, will help them want to do more as they get older. And let's face it, people who are time-starved on the weekends, you're not going to leave your family to go volunteer, so you bring them along, and then it can be a family activity.
Mm-hmm. Any moment you will remember for the rest of your life in these last 3 years?
Yes, probably many in being out at service activities. Probably doing one of our wonderful partners is Impact Hong Kong. Probably a lot of people in here know Impact.
Featured on #Impact and Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Check.
And probably doing a kindness walk with my husband and a dear friend, and experiencing the Jeff Ruttmeyer who runs Impact. When we asked him, "Don't you have a language barrier? Does that ever impede your ability to connect with people?" And he absolutely straight-faced said, "Isn't kindness a universal language?" And at first I thought he was kind of joking, and he was dead serious. And then you see him in action, and you go along with him, and you realize he's not kidding. That's exactly right.
And I have to thank one person. Can I call you out? Nicola Stroms in the audience. She's one of my dear friends here in Hong Kong, and they organized this as a well, how should I say? We wanted to do something meaningful for our birthdays, our girlfriends' birthdays, and that was so meaningful to me. Can I just say thank you, Nikki, for always being so supportive? And they've been listening to the podcast, and then they wanted to choose a charity that we could support as a group, and then we did this together. And I remember that I knew Jeff already, but it was meaningful to me to see that my friends could also, and come back as well. You do it. It's kind of contagious. If you do good, kind of like you wanna get back on that. What is that? What was that substance you said that's triggered in your brain?
The dopamine.
The dopamine.
Yep.
You want more. You want more of it. Definitely. Yes, Sue. What is there anything you think we should have talked about 3 years ago that we didn't bring up, and now is your chance to even say that in front of an audience and go on the record? It can be anything.
I think it's that everyone has something to give, and actually volunteering, I don't see it as a one-way, and this is something I've probably learned over the years that I've been with HandsOn, so maybe I wouldn't have necessarily been in a position to bring it up, but we really try to create two-way exchanges, because we don't see it as the haves giving to the have-nots or anything. There is an exchange in every relationship, whether that relationship is ongoing or it's something that lasts just for a short moment. And I think everyone has something to give, and everyone has something to gain. So, and everyone has, even beyond the service, everyone has some kind of skill that they can offer. And nonprofits need all kinds of skills to help them in their capacity building. We just recently launched a skills-based volunteering portion of our website for people with legal and finance and marketing skills. But we also had someone recently, one of our NGO partners said, "I need someone with a green thumb." You know, so there's all kinds of skills out there that can be put to really good use to help mission-driven organizations either capacity build themselves or in the service they provide.
And that should encourage everyone to just try it out. I was like, I don't want to listen to Hashtag Impact Podcast to just listen to it. I actually want people to take something from it and take some action as well. So if just a few people here today are inspired to check out your website, HandsOnHongKong.org, check out the calendar, check out what what kind of events are on where people could donate their time. But Sue, I won't let you go until we go through the quick fire round with me, and we're gonna do it really quick.
Okay.
Yeah. Making an impact means
touching someone else's life in a positive way, hopefully.
What I wish I knew when I was 20.
When I was 20, I wish I knew that you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have a grand master plan. You can actually have 5 different careers in a lifetime, and in an odd way, they'll connect at some point, and that's really exciting.
And it will all make sense. Last but not least, what can everyone do right now? All the people here in the house today, after they've been at this amazing podcast festival, to make the world a better place. We're all gonna do it together today.
Number 1, I would say let's put our phones down. I can't tell you how many people I bump into who are like this. But I think when the phone is down, you actually have your eyes open and looking up, and then you can actually see the need, and then you know where you can make an impact.
Head over to HandsOnHongKong.org to check out the calendar, and also to hashtagimpact.com for more episodes. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.